I think what Americans feel when they meet Israelis initially might be a little bit of this overly confident, cocky kind of people that are invading my personal space. And what we saw is two major trends. One thing is amazing resilience across the entire, from early stage all the way up. Israeli tech entrepreneurs are delivering business results pretty much like in track. And it's hard to believe when I look at Silicon Valley and Israel, and really I don't see any other hub in the world that's even close to those two. I can see Israel is a stronger potential right now, even than Silicon Valley.
Welcome to another episode of Israel Tech. I'm excited to have here Jason Wolf from Iron Nation. Jason, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you're the managing partner and co-founder, but before we even talk about Iron Nation, what you're doing for the tech ecosystem here and your experience from Silicon Valley, I want to tell you how we met, which is very Israeli. We were hired to come and do a big filming for an Israel tech mission, a tech mission of big investors from abroad at the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation. And we were on the elevator, Revital, myself, and you, no idea who you were. And I just said, hey, what's your name? And just speaking to strangers as if you know them is a very Israeli thing to do. And through that, we developed we spoke, we touched base, email, we said, let's do something together. And now we're actually here in Patango's offices and we interviewed Chemi Perez in the morning. And now we have the opportunity to interview you. Lucky you get us on the full stomach. So what is it about, you think, let's just jump right in. What is it about uniquely about Israelis that are able to go up to people, speak to them, but also to be someone come up and speak to you? And that's totally cool. And you open up.
Well, the great thing is actually, you didn't tell me you're going to start with that. And it started actually before. If you remember, I was outside the elevator and I actually shouted, wait, I need to go down, remember? And then I came in. So it takes your example to the extreme. We're pretty outgoing kind of bunch in Israel, and people call it chutzpah. But I think it's what makes us both hopefully more united, and also what helps us build better relationships. So I don't know if it's the war, the weather, the water, all the W, but I think it's an amazing trait that we have, and we just connect on day one with everything we do.
Is it about intimacy? I find Israelis often are very warm and there's an intimacy. And then there's an intimacy between two strangers almost that I don't think really exists in other cultures.
It's really, in my view, as I wasn't born here, but the difference I felt as a young kid coming to this country was that everybody's in your business. And initially you reject it, and very quickly you fall in love with it because you feel that everybody's got your back if you need them. So it creates intimacy, but I think and unlike, spent 25 years in the US, where you feel it's more of a cordial, the right behavior to get to know people, here it really feels genuine. So it creates intimacy. It's not an artificial kind of engagement.
How is the Israeli culture and the tech culture received or experienced by American counterparts?
First of all, like my reaction coming to Israel as a young kid, or even we came back to Israel 6 years ago, and my kid, who's now 17, was 11. The first year, he suffered. Every day would come back from school crying, like the teacher, no one listens to her, the kids speak too closely, they spit, no respect. And now he can stand up and give you a whole ceremonial speech about why the culture is much better. So I think what Americans feel when they meet Israelis initially might be a little bit of this overly confident, cocky kind of people that are invading my personal space.
You're making eye contact right at me.
But I think over time, it really grows on people. And after 25 years in Silicon Valley, I can say it's one of our secret weapons as a people on average.
So but don't you think that maybe prevents opportunities, killing first impressions?
Not necessarily, because I think that in most human interaction, confidence and warmth in engagement actually leads to a good first impression. So I don't think it's on average that it's that bad a trait to have.
Awesome. So we'll get back to America and Israel and your time there. So you're working on this thing called Iron Nation, which is a great name. Why don't you tell us kind of what is so unique about Iron Nation?
Well, let me go back, if I can, just before how I got to Iron Nation, because Iron Nation was something that started on the 10th of October 2023, so just after the war broke out. Prior to that, I've been in tech as an entrepreneur, as an executive at large tech companies globally, 25 years Silicon Valley, 6 years since being back in Israel. But it was always as an entrepreneur, always as an operator, never thought for a moment that I'd be on the investor side. Iron Nation was born by one of my partners. We're three partners that set up Iron Nation. By one of my partners on the 9th of October, I think, he was at a funeral of one of the people that fell from our unit. We knew each other 35 years ago in the military. And he raised the question, he said, what's going to be of all these startups now that people are being drafted to reserves, now that potentially investors are going to be scared to put money in? This looks like a very serious war. And we met at that time, and three of us decided to do something about it and set up Iron Nation. Iron Nation is a fund like any other VC fund, because we know that's the mechanism that early startups rely on to fund their operations, but with one very big difference. We did this as a volunteer organization, pro bono, everything from us three to the services around us, Meitar, ENY, the offices that we use in Mixer, all the volunteers, the VCs. You spoke earlier today to Jaime Perez. So a lot of the leaders in the ecosystem supported Iron Nation, and we created this fund that operates for the startups like a regular VC, but can very quickly deploy cash where they need it and save them in the toughest time where they really are either being drafted to reserves or capital's not coming to those companies.
So it's almost like a bridge gift.
It's very similar to a bridge, but in our world of tech, bridge has a very specific meaning. It's a equity or safe, so it is a convertible or an equity investment in a timed period, which sounds like a bridge. And it means that we need to make sure that this company is A, viable, going to succeed for the long term. This is not philanthropy to save companies that wouldn't succeed anyway. It's a vehicle that allows them to get to that next round and continue their trajectory up and to the right.
If it wouldn't be for Iron Nation, would these companies not receive funding and end up closing down?
That's a great question, because you never know 100%, but we raised $20 million fairly quickly.
Congratulations.
We invested so far in 22 companies to date. A large portion of those we could, not for sure say, but a lot of them might not have succeeded. One of them, which the CEO has gone on record and said, listen, if it wasn't for Iron Nation, I would have been back coaching ping pong, which is he was a good ping pong player. That was his desire. And he really thought about the company not being able to continue. And that to us is really why we created Iron Nation, and that's our passion. We wanted to get as many of these companies up and running. Mm-hmm. So the answer is yes, for a lot of them it's true. And we've got a lot of good examples for that, but it's not obvious about every one of them. You don't know really what, if suddenly in the last minute they would have managed to raise money. But the way we worked in looking at what the war impact is and what their financial projections are and their financial viability is, it allowed us to make these investments very quickly. We were one of the top investors, either Israeli or foreign, in the past year. No one made that many investments in 1 year period.
That's impressive.
Let me tell you about our partners, wadidigital.com, the technology marketing agency. If you're a startup or a tech company that needs marketing help, bring in leads that actually convert into opportunities, then this is your real partner. They even help us and many other technology companies with advertising, SEO, social media, influencer marketing, and video editing, just like they do for us here at Israel Tech. So what are you waiting for? Take your marketing to the next level and reach out to Wadi Digital. And now back to the show.
So what considerations do you take when making an investment?
So first of all, we're looking at these companies and looking at what their plans were before the war. What was their status before the war? What are they trying to do? One of the criteria was that these people have already raised at least $1 million from other VCs. So we started at a seed and A, which means these are companies that already raised in the past. So we had a VC, a professional investor, to talk to say, what was the initial investment thesis that you had about this company? And we could look at that, compare it to where they are at the 10th or 12th of October, in November, December, January of 24, and be able to say, is this a company that should be viable longer term? And then we listen to the team and understand where they are. I'll give you an example, a company called Green Eye, an ag tech company, 3 guys from Special Forces. Immediately after the war, they are drafted. The next day, they get a nice, polite email from an investor in Europe that says, listen, we were about to give you the $7 million investment, but the conditions of the war, we're not sure we can deploy that cash. We'll let you know once the war ends. Now, that type of company where these guys are fighting and the money's being withdrawn can't survive long term. We went in, we led that round, we got previous investors to join us, and ultimately this is a company that between 2023 and 24 did 5x in their sales, and now are on the path to grow from here. So these are the examples. This is how we managed to look at their financial trajectory before, understand where the team are, and be able to bridge, as you say, bridge them to that next round. And now they're actually going out to raise another round.
So you raised $20 million in the first fund, right?
Yeah.
Did you distribute all of it?
We're almost there. We've got a couple more checks to write, but we decided about 6 months ago, we were supposed to go back to our day jobs by now, but 6 months ago, we looked both at the landscape of situation that still needs additional funding and the opportunity. I've been in tech for 30 years. I haven't seen valuations or opportunities this good. And so frankly,
even in like 2021, 2020, where when it was a bubble?
Then the opposite you had an oversupply of money.
Right.
Now it seems that that creates a lot of the opportunity we see today, because there were thousands of companies created. Now, of course, some of them won't survive, but there's a lot that need funding. And our job as investors is to find those that are going to succeed and that deserve the funding. And the funding now is not as hyped as it was in 2021, 22.
Are you in the process of raising your next fund?
That's a great question. We haven't yet publicly announced anything, so I can say yes, we are. And we're very optimistic that we will announce soon of Iron Nation 2.
Awesome. How much are you looking at? How much is your fund?
So we're looking to raise 100 million, so bigger fund. And the logic behind a bigger fund is that we have partnered with investors around the world, and a lot of them want to see bigger fund size to deploy. And we believe that we can be a catalyst for not only for Iron Nation from these investors, but for the rest of the ecosystem. As we said, Iron Nation was built and bred by the entire ecosystem, and we see our role as something that's going to support the ecosystem, sometimes investing in categories that are kind of overlooked, know how to go and co-invest together with leading VCs here, know how to bring deals to them, and also follow on some of the best investments that we've made in Iron Nation 1.
When you said that your investors would be interested in obviously bigger investments, is it because they want to have a bigger impact and a faster scale? Do they want more equity in the positions that they take? What is it that these foreign investors are most looking forward to?
It's a great question. I think a lot, we looked at who were the investors in Iron Nation 1. And of course, we saw both high net worth individuals as well as organizations, either family offices or foundations. But we also saw who said, listen, we can't do it, either because your volunteers, your first-time fund general partners, or the fund size is too small. So paradoxically, by asking and creating a bigger fund, we increase the pool of potential investors into Iron Nation and also into Israel, because most our LPs, most of these investors had not invested in Israeli tech before, which is amazing because they've donated philanthropy, hundreds and hundreds of millions, especially from North America. After the war, these people have been for decades donating, contributing to Israel, but they didn't look at the asset class that is an amazingly productive financially asset class of tech to invest in Israel. So we see this as our main mission, is to bring these investors and to grow their pocket share in Israel.
Lovely. It's fascinating in a sense now. The dollars are competing for investment in private sector and maybe donating to a nonprofit, potentially. That there's
well, I don't see it as a competition. That's a good
right. They
thing.
both serve the same greater goal.
Exactly.
And everyone has their own unique needs. You know, sometimes you want to give, sometimes you need a tax donation, sometimes you want to invest.
Yeah.
And so you're giving another option. Therefore, you're able to bring more people to the table and bring them together.
Yeah. Last thing I want to get into trouble that we're diverting philanthropy money into investment money, but we don't see it because all these foundations, these high net worth individuals, have billions invested, but they're investing in U.S. stock exchange bonds, even in Emirati and Singaporean stocks and that, which is okay, but why not invest in probably the most productive, the most
I mean,
productive
economically and morally, by the way, financially. It's
exactly.
So when you go and look for new investors for the fund, how do you find them? How do you pursue them? How do you go about? How much of it do you lean on, like the fact that you're trying to help and save startups, and not just as a purely focused on ROI? Because it depends who you speak to. How do you work your network in order to find these people?
That's a great question. For us, we need to get people that are sympathetic to Israel. Otherwise, the discussion becomes on only dollars and cents. Mm-hmm. We definitely need to talk dollars and cents, and anybody who invests in Iron Nation is expecting a really good return. And that's what we're bringing. We're showing this already with the first fund. We're going to be co-investing with top tier VCs in great deals. So we see ourselves as a kind of, I wouldn't say totally de-risked, but a lower risked portfolio of investments because we're partnering with the ecosystem. So first of all, we definitely need to return a good return. But because they're coming sympathetic to the cause, to Israel, we find that those audience is an audience that is looking at it as a dual purpose, as let me do well financially while doing good. And that means that some of them are coming from donor advised funds. These are people that actually have made the actual donation, but that donation can be put into into an investment area. And then when it comes back to the fund, it then can triple and they could do better. They can give it to cancer research. They can give it to, building Israeli hospitals or anything they want to do philanthropy-wise, but it actually becomes a much higher amount of giving. So for us, we're looking at people that are sympathetic, are Zionistic to the cause, a lot of them Jewish, but not all. We've got a lot of evangelical contribution, and we've got a lot of other investors that are coming here because they want to do well and they want to do good.
Capitalism at its best, basically. What is the minimum check you're looking for Iron Nation 2?
So when it's individual, it's $250,000. When it's institutional, it's $1 million. But the good news is even you can, because we, unlike Iron Nation 1, which was an emergency fund and we had to call all the capital immediately, and we thought that within a year we've deployed, we've saved 24, 25 companies, and we're going back to our day jobs. In Iron Nation 2, we've turned this into a very professional organization that looks at it over multiple years. So we don't call more than 25% of the capital in any given year. So even if it's 250,000, you could say, oh, I'm now investing 67 each year. So it's more, so we can get you on as an investor too.
Or for those watching at home. So has your mission changed now with Iron Nation 2?
I think it's it's been tweaked, and it's a very good question, because we asked ourselves 6 months ago when we were kind of looking at the situation, looking at the extended time the war is happening and the impact, and we said, okay, we're about halfway through the year, we've deployed over half the money. What is happening in the environment? And what we saw is two major trends. One thing is amazing resilience across the entire, from early stage all the way up. Israeli tech entrepreneurs are delivering business results pretty much like in track. And it's hard to believe, because 15 to 20% of workforce was in reserves. Flights are canceled. You can't fly anyway. But like the Israeli tech they found a way to actually deliver those results. So that's been very good. On the other hand, when you look at the success, you look at even the investments, over $10 billion investment, the M&A activity, all did pretty well in 2024. But when you go down a little bit deeper and you see, 42%, I think that's the number, was in cyber. And then you see some major deals and you start breaking it down, you see that there are very important and big pockets that are being underfunded. And we said, and that's the alignment of our mission forward, is we know that over the next few years, there's always going to be pressure on Israel and Israel tech to basically try and get out and get money that's been reduced. There actually was a drop of 16% in foreign investment, even though the overall number was higher last year in 2024. So we see our mission as being able to bring very stable and continuous funding into great opportunities in Israel. And that will feed this and become a kind of a perpetual positive cycle, because tech is so important to the Israeli economy overall, to the Israeli society, to the messages that we need to keep carrying around positivity and strong, united people to the future of Israel. And that's why our mission is a little bit more broader and longer term than just the emergency.
So when you're thinking longer term, right, I understand the emergency isn't as relevant now. Do you think of where is it more longer term, what companies, what industries that you say are underfunded, as an example? Or is it more like the vision for Israel may have mean more AI or more support, let's say, universities, PhDs studying AI or quantum computing or drone technology? Do you think what's important for Israel's long-term vision and therefore pursue those industries? Or do you really look for more of opportunities for arbitrage, things are underfunded given certain circumstances?
We would love to know what those industries are of the future, but I think it's impossible for us. We need to look at the current landscape,
What's
or the
impossible
emerging, to be able to say that it's going to be around drones or around AI.
I can tell you.
Okay, that's great. So tell us, and then we'll know where to invest.
I think personal robotics, physical robots within the office, not just for cleaning that we see in supermarkets, but also to serve you. And that also includes eventually washing clothes, folding clothes, washing dishes. I think these are part of things that we're going to be seeing more of, even potentially like a butler. Personal trainers can be robots. I mean, really anything and everything there. Obviously, AI is the core of the technology, is for almost any kind of B2B tech. Space tech is a big component. Whoever controls space controls Earth. A lot of innovation that comes to make things work in space, we then find repurposes to use here, and vice versa. Obviously, quantum computing is the hardware part. It's going to be built probably on the AI. So that data center, energy efficiency for those data centers, centralizations of mini power plants, like they're doing like small nuclear reactors to serve data centers. I mean, we feel like this is kind of the future, no? So isn't there these holes or opportunities that Iron Nation would specifically want to move into because they see that to give Israel, the nation, the Iron Nation, a strategic advantage? Or is it just simply at where's their better return?
No, I think you're right. There are major economic trends or human desires or the need to decarbonize or the need to find solutions to major problems, like you spoke about the data compute, both in terms of the processing power and the data energy. So there's lots of major trends like that. we as Iron Nation and looking at as Israel's role there don't necessarily need to dictate which those are. The industry at large is going to find those categories as is going to look at them and say, okay, now we're, look at healthcare. Healthcare is a great example. It's a fifth of the US GDP today, growing tremendously. Israel has, Iron Nation, we had a third of our applicants come in the medical health tech space. And that's a very underfunded area. So we don't have to, think about, is health tech the right industry? We see the global momentum in terms of where the need is. We see the ability to change US health tech, and it's been going up as a percentage of GDP for decades. And we know there's going to be a major disruption. If Israel and a cluster in Israel doesn't support that, we're going to miss a major opportunity. Mm-hmm. Like you said, defense tech's another one where, fortunately, unfortunately, we've got the creds, we've got the experience from the war defensively, which is where we focus. We will not focus offensively, but defensively, we've learned so many lessons of how you engage and how populations can survive through crisis, that we will definitely have some technologies to share with the rest of the world. So in that sense, yes, but we are not the ones that necessarily decide which trends are there. We're looking at the mega trends of the world, and we're looking at where the assets that Israeli companies are likely to flourish in, and those are the ones that we're going to back.
Where do you think, so let's say, where do you think Israelis are most likely to flourish now? Where do you think they'll be in 5 to 10 years?
So now, great question. We don't have to guess. We know. Look at cyber. It's a huge area. Now, would Iron Nation do the best job in trying to run after cyber deals that are oversubscribed? No. Our partners in the VC industry, if it's oversubscribed, they can always bring us in as experts and people that have built, unicorns and built big businesses, and we're happy to help. But we're not going to fight for a piece of an industry that's already very mature. We will find together with them and bring them into those industries that we do believe are going to be very important, like health tech, like defense, like some of the deep tech and climate that are going through cycles. And we just made an investment in a food tech company, which was in huge favor a few years ago, went out of favor. But when you look at the mega trends and you say, food tech, we have to improve as humanity because we won't be able to feed everybody if we do it in an unsustainable way. And we actually went for the piece of the supply chain that actually allows all types of food tech, all types of protein production to be more productive. So if you invest in, today, eggs or meat or milk, or you've got a chance of something going in the wrong direction, and you've invested in one vertical. But if you invest in the tools that make the production of protein more efficient, as the entire industry does grow, suddenly all of those segments need to use you. So we just did an investment in an amazing company from the north, from Kiryat Shmona, that was, of course, evacuated after the war. Probably wouldn't have survived if Iron Nation wouldn't have invested in them. And now they're operating a little bit further south. Maybe they'll go back to the north one day, but doing amazing work on deep type technology to replicate and to be able to separate the proteins in different processes.
So you're distributing a lot of capital. That's great, and you're providing ROI. What are some different kind of companies you might be investing in, as an example?
Great, that's a great question. So if you look at what we spoke about in terms of the examples of categories, if we're talking about defense tech or health tech. In health tech, we spoke earlier about the CEO who was going to, his company was going to fold and was looking at his life as a ping pong coach. That company is called Nurami Medical, a company from the north, founder that's a female Christian Arab. Company has all religions working out of the north. Amazing company that is developing it's the patch that you put on brain surgery, on spinal surgery, the dura layer on top of the brain. and they do it through electrospinning. It's a special solution that is biodegradable, the right porosity. It allows for adhesiveness of that to happen on the brain. Up until now, the standard of taking care of these things is either like a human, taking a human graft and putting it there. So the usage of this is totally different in a world that you could take it out of a patch and put it on a surgery. Before the war, they got FDA approval for this first product that they had, and then the war breaks out. Following it, we made the first investment, others followed with us, and now this company has a multinational offering them to invest in their next round.
Nice.
And provide an option to buy them at 16 times the investment we made just a year ago.
Nice.
So that type of thing where you are investing in a company that is addressing a huge need in a market, doing good, is also a great showcase for how you do well.
I like that. It's good. It's a showcase of how you do well. What kind of returns are you expecting on the fund?
So we're talking about a 3.4x. That's what we're anticipating.
Nice.
And of course, as the fund develops, we'll see. Hopefully, we can exceed that.
Amen. That sounds terrific. When I wanted to talk about your career in the United States, your charming accent doesn't sound so Israeli. South African, right?
Oh, good guess.
And what brought you to go and work in America? And then what brought you back?
Well, what brought me back is easier.
Yeah, I know, but that's funny because this similar question I asked to anyone.
Yeah.
Because I was involved in tech. Let's say like my dad, who went painted houses, he left out the Yom Kippur War, and then he just moved back. But it seems like what brings you back is always easier. So what brought you there? Did you think you were going to come back? When
my dad is the reason I came in the first place.
Okay, you too.
I didn't do much. I was 6 years old, so my dad, who was a South African, my mom's a Holocaust survivor. They actually, at the age of 18, each one of them decides to go and come to Israel.
Right.
It's the first time. And they came to Israel to volunteer for the army. This is early state days. And they fall in love, move back to South Africa, because at the time, Israel was going through this tremendous depression in terms of financials. And their dream was always to set up a family in Israel. So 15 years later, they managed to come back with a 6-year-old child, 2 older sisters, a younger brother, leave everything behind and restart their life in Israel. So for me, coming the first time was very easy, and that planted the seeds that this is the place that I want to be. I want my kids to grow up here and generations to be. This is my mission. I want this place to be the example for how life should be as a family, as a people, as a nation that helps the rest of the world. Then what happened, why I left this paradise per se, is I wanted to spend a year abroad. After 8 years serving the country, special forces, I decided, something in me said, before you continue that path, and my path, my dream was to become an ambassador one day for Israel, continue my Zionistic, I don't know if it's DNA or because I came at a young age, but I decided to take 1 year off and to see what else the world has to offer. I was introduced to this thing called the internet in the 90s.
Never heard of it. What is it?
Yeah, exactly. I felt the same way. And the person who introduced it to me, who is a great mentor of mine, convinced me that this is an amazing new technology that has a much bigger, broader application than, you serving in the military or going out and doing something as an ambassador for Israel. 25 years later, with 3 kids, came back to Israel in 2018. So that's my story.
What did you do abroad for 25 years? Just working on the internet? What do you mean?
No, so the first company that was actually enabled access to big enterprise companies to the internet, to this new technology, that was sold to SAP, one of the largest deals of the time at $400 million in cash.
Nice.
And then I was expecting to go back to this beautiful startup life, start something new that's going to have an impact on the world. 7 years at SAP, leading teams that brought new products to market. Then I left SAP to join another startup by the same entrepreneur who had this crazy idea that the world is not sustainable with oil, and how can I get the world off oil? And he wrote this white paper called Project Better Place.
Shai Agassi?
Shai Agassi. So although he's my age, he's one of the people I really admire as an entrepreneur, who can see a huge problem and can break it down to steps where you create on the way a very plausible way to solve it. And that's when I left SAP to join Better Place.
Just a shame he didn't solve it.
Shame he didn't solve it, but when we look around, the solution was pretty damn accurate.
It was very accurate. Maybe even more. Right? Yeah, it was more about probably the business execution. So why did you decide to come back?
So when my older daughters reached the age of 18, the first one, we said, okay, you go out and study at San Jose and lived in Silicon Valley. And when the younger one at 18 finished high school, we said, we're going back for a trial period in Israel. Of course, no one sees this, so they won't know that it was just a trick to try and get them back to Israel.
Of course.
We succeeded partially to get the family back to Israel.
How are they feeling about it, if I were to ask them?
Now that it becomes public, maybe they'll feel a little differently, but I think they love Israel. And I say partially because my oldest is now in San Francisco doing what I did 25 years ago, 30 years ago. She's working in high tech.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, huh?
Exactly. So I couldn't...
did you tell her she's going to make her way back, whether she knows it or not?
I reckon that the more I tell her that...
The more she'll push away.
Exactly. So,
I have a 13-year-old daughter. I'm learning this the hard way, like every 6 hours.
Yeah.
Amazing. So when you came back, how did you come back? Did you have something lined up, an opportunity, or did someone bring you back? Usually people try to line something up for them, or what happened? A door closed and then you came?
Yeah, I think, you look at our few interactions that we've had, I'm not much of I don't need that parachute to do what I think is the right thing. So it was about the dates where they would finish high school,
right,
and we would move back. Actually, the first 2 years until Corona, we moved back in 2018. Until 2020, I was spending 1 week in Israel, 1 week back in Silicon Valley in my prior startup, which was a construction.
That sounds like hell. That's like 20% of the time you're on the airplane or in the airport, right?
But for me, this mission of building meaningful technologies that change the world is just something that's so fulfilling that, you fill the time. You sleep on the airplane, or you learn something new, or you prepare for another meeting,
right.
I really enjoyed it. And Corona stopped that, but up until Corona, it was a very good. And the good news is, because it was a construction tech, a real estate tech company, I actually got to live while I was in Silicon Valley. I got to live in the prototype house of the future. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. That was really cool.
What advice would you give to an Israeli entrepreneur or tech enthusiast that's considering relocating to Silicon Valley?
Contrary to my countless attempts to move back, I would say...
What would you tell them? Would you tell them do it? Don't do it. If you do what? What you're looking for could be found here, but differently. Go commute. Like, what would you... I'm sure it's different for every personality and every industry.
No, but it's a great question, because I say 100% do it. Mm-hmm. The more we get people to leave, build companies, experience life, get these own experiences and come back here, the more this ecosystem can grow and become more robust. Mm-hmm. When I moved in 1994...
Is it more about building the business, or being able to build the business faster there if they think they could? Or is it more about they're exposed to some kind of technology or learning or a culture that would be great that they could only get there?
I think it's and, because it's not just about the skills and the tools you get. It's about the culture.
Right. No, I see that sometimes. Like, our culture is so different. The more people go abroad, the more they come back, is people talk about, why is the cost of living so expensive? You need people to go away. I even told Americans, I think like a lot of Americans take America for granted. Go travel the world. You'll quickly see how amazing America is, how great it is. And the thing they tell Israelis, but then also they come back like, why are things so expensive? Why don't we have more like choice in the supermarkets? Why is our government subsidizing all our dairy and like weird things like that? Why is our housing double? Right? And then they bring other things back. More people smoking cigars, a little more golf playing, things that are nice to have.
Yeah.
Better scotch.
Yeah. So I think that all that, Israel doesn't have its own huge market here.
Right.
So the more we go out, wherever it is
Right.
in the world, and we learn these other cultures, it's going to make what makes us so unique be stronger and be able to develop companies that understand the end markets. When I moved to Silicon Valley in the mid-90s, Israel had the beginnings of a strong education, a strong developer, software, hardware. There were semiconductor people. There was a core technology, but you didn't have what Silicon Valley had. This interplay between product people, technology people, marketing people, money, that created this dynamic of Silicon Valley. I can honestly say today, when I look at Silicon Valley and Israel, and really I don't see any other hub in the world that's even close to those two, I can see Israel is a stronger potential right now, even than Silicon Valley. And I know that's a controversial thing to say, but I think it has more potential because of the fact that we live in a much tighter and the pressure of the war, the pressure of things that are going around, and the fact that we don't have a market around us. We can't get lazy and just go out to the market that's around us. We have to figure out these international markets, and that's why having people leave, CEOs, I absolutely recommend anybody that can do that for a while, let them go. Because if we got the confidence that it's so good here, and this is the example of how a healthy ecosystem will be, they'll come back.
Right. Too many of them go. The question, will you have a brain drain, and then will we lose a little part of our advantage? It comes to Israel, when it comes to the tech ecosystem, as you were saying, or in defense, it's thrive or die. There is no alternative. Mediocrity is not an option. I mean, in general, it's really culturally Jewish that mediocrity isn't, but it's literally gun to your head, thrive or die, when it comes to Israel economically, technologically advanced, or when it comes to defense. So that's a good point.
And that's a very good point, because that probably explains why we're a better ecosystem, because necessity and we have no other option is what's going to make it so strong here. And the second thing that I'll say that is controversial is I don't think there's people talk about the risk of brain drain and all that stuff. If you're confident and you've got the best ecosystem, it's like with the kid, let them go, let them experience. They'll come back and they'll make the ecosystem even stronger.
Right.
If you try to eliminate it, think about all the countries that tried to eliminate brain drain.
Right.
Most of them failed miserably.
Right, but that's because they had nothing to keep them.
Exactly. So
and
we
they
have
nothing to bring them back.
Exactly. So we need to work on keeping that core so attractive that we're not scared to let them go, because they're going to come back.
Love that. So it seems Israel, thankfully, kind of has a hold on preventing brain drain. That means a lot of promise for our ecosystem in the future. Where do you see the tech ecosystem? Where do you see us in 5 or 10, 15 years?
That's to me, that's why I'm doing Iron Nation. That's why I'm not doing another entrepreneurship right now. I'm focused on bringing the experience of 30 years to help multiple companies, and each one you do 3, 5, 6 years. But here we have the opportunity to invest and help build the next Israeli unicorns. And in 10 years, the measure of success is how viable is this tech ecosystem as an engine for Israel. For instance, today, over 50% of exports, over a third of the income tax, 20% of GDP is coming from tech. We need to be able to show that as a core sustain as we grow to the future. How do we do that? We're looking at this new Middle East. Hopefully we get to collaborate with a lot of these partners and have a regional success that is Israel with this region selling to the rest of the world technology-based solutions to things that are things like you spoke about, medical, health. Those are, the population is aging. We're spending a huge amount of global GDP on that. Defense, how do we make people safer in that? Cyber, of course, hopefully continues to thrive and grow. Productivity in software, robotics, you mentioned how we're going to take care of these adults in their homes. So there's a huge amount of need. And together with this region, if you think about it, what do you need for an AI world? You need compute, you need data, you need energy, and then you're going to need regulation, business processes, use cases. With our partners here, we've got the largest energy region in the world. God knows Israel has both the data capabilities and the processing capabilities, and we can build like the future of what the economy looks like and use that as a, sometimes we say Ola Goim. We can make a better world with this ecosystem, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in my view. So 10 years from now, I'm, when you look at the financial side, I'm very bullish. I'm long Israel big time.
Awesome. I can't wait to see what the future holds together. Jason Wolf, Iron Nation, thank you for being on Israel Tech.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks.